Hi, Realtors. This is Lindsay Jackson, your Chief Advocacy Officer at SCR. Thank you all for tuning in over the past couple of days for SCR's annual Capital Conference. Though I hate we can't be together in person and gathering at the State House today, we do have a lot of great sessions and information to share with you on RPAC and state and federal advocacy. But with me right now, I have NAR and South Carolina's very own Joe Harris. Joe Harris is a good friend of mine and NAR's Vice President of Government Advocacy. He joined NAR in 2015 and most recently served as its Director of Federal, Legislative, and Political Affairs, where his experience and years of relationships developed in Congress and helped NAR navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. Joe spent 8 years on Capitol Hill and he earned his law degree from the University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Thanks for being with us today, Joe.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's always great to see you. And, like you said, wish we could do it in person, but I'm glad to be with all of you, at least virtually this time.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. So we definitely talk a lot about local and state issues, but today we really want to kind of focus in and dig a little bit deeper on the federal level and how the issues that you're dealing with at NAR affect our membership at the state level. So I've got a couple of questions I just want to ask you today. And I think I'm going to start out with the burning question that probably everyone's thinking about right now is it's definitely an understatement to say that there's a lot going on in DC right now. Can you give us a quick update on what's happening post-inauguration?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just great relief, quite frankly, that the inauguration came and it went without incident. Given the catastrophic events of January 6th, which left a really pretty thick cloud over the city. And folks like myself who have worked in Congress, who love the institution, respect the institution. It was an emotional day for me and a lot of others who've given many years of their life to public service. And so, I think that the events of January 6th in many ways are going to continue to shape the happenings in Congress over the next several weeks and months. First, this is something a lot of people don't think about, but just the continued safety of members of Congress, senators, staff going forward is a big concern. I can tell you that Republican, Democrat, House, Senate, there's still death threats that are being issued. There's still members who are wearing bulletproof vests. This is going to be an ongoing activity in terms of national security and making sure that the folks who are working in the Capitol complex, because it's not just when they're there, but it's also when you're traveling back home. And I'm sure your members have seen the video of members getting accosted at airports, and it's a concern. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. And of course, it's just, the hyper partisanship, just the ability of folks to work together. And, and of course, another extension of that is the impeachment trial that'll be coming up. I'm sure folks have read that Chuck Schumer has announced that the House will be sending over articles of impeachment to the Senate on Monday. So the rules say that when that happens, the Senate has to drop whatever it's doing and deal with those articles of impeachment, which obviously is coming at a time when President Biden is trying to focus on getting his cabinet picks confirmed. So, looking ahead, we know that the majorities in the 117 are extremely tight in the House and in the Senate. It can't be any tighter in the Senate. But one thing that I'm kind of focused on is seeing how the committee assignments are going to work out. In the House, that process should be finalized hopefully by next week. In the Senate, it's going to take a lot longer. Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell are still negotiating the power sharing agreement, which will dictate Senate rules and, what the ratios of the committees are going to be. But for me, this sort of shows that NAR is going to have an even more important role to play, and realtors, South Carolina realtors, everybody. is going to have a larger role to play in unifying Congress, bringing people together around issues that are bipartisan issues. They're important not only to our industry, but to our communities, to the economy. I see us as being a real unifying force going forward.
And you mentioned the change up in committees, and certainly the Senate committees being chaired by the Democrats for the first time in 6 years. What changes do you kind of anticipate with the key committees like finance and banking? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's hard to say because right now, until that agreement is reached, technically Republicans are still chairing the committees until they can agree on some type of power sharing agreement. In fact, we were having this conversation. We're trying to send some letters to the Senate. And we're trying to figure out who we address this thing to. So we'll address it to both of them. But it could be a 50-50 split on most of these committees like finance and banking. But I think you're going to see the biggest changes when that shift does occur. Maybe on Senate banking. Mike Crapo is the current chair from Idaho. He's actually moving over to finance, but the incoming chairman of banking is Sherrod Brown from Ohio. And he's a lot more progressive, obviously, than Mike Crapo. And he's already indicated that he wants to do a lot of things around housing, kind of improving housing and banking for low income individuals. Fostering racial equality. He's really big about healthcare. So those are some of the, it's going to be a big difference on banking. Also, because honestly, I don't know how many markups Senator Crapo had on his committee. I don't think he had many as chairman. So I think you're going to see a lot more active banking committee. And on Senate Finance, the incoming chairman is Ron Wyden from Oregon. He's actually a very measured, practical person. He is also progressive, but I see Senate Finance working more to do things like roll back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the corporate tax cuts. I think you'll see those reinstated to pre-TCJA levels. Reducing the cost of prescription drugs. These are things that he's mentioned as wanting to champion on finance. So I think those are just two examples. The chairman obviously dictate the agenda for those committees. Obviously, pending leadership approval. All that stuff has to go through leadership. But really, these committees tend to take on the tenor and the attitudes of their chairman. So I think you're going to see some big changes over what we've seen these past few years.
Absolutely. So not too different from the state level in that perspective.
Yeah.
Just kind of jumping in a little bit more. You've mentioned that there's a lot of issues flying around out there, a lot of change. What is NAR specifically focusing on right now? Like, what are the top priorities as far as COVID response? Housing, flood insurance. Any updates on that?
Yeah, you hit them.
All of them.
So obviously, President Biden came right out of the gate with extending the federal eviction moratorium. We just want to make sure that if that happens, when that happens, it's accompanied by an extension of rental assistance. We've been very consistent on that. I feel like Congress understands that you can't have one without the other without doing a lot of harm. So we're going to keep talking about, in addition to PPP and unemployment and all the programs that have been absolutely crucial lifelines for our members and their clients who are trying to stay in their homes, who are trying not to, if you want to be a homeowner, spend all of your savings on getting through this crisis. We feel like these are very important issues that we're tracking. But beyond the COVID, which is going to be the top issue, make no mistake about that. The health response in terms of vaccines and getting the economy back open again. But remember that Biden's going to be looking for some very key early bipartisan wins, and infrastructure yet again is one of those things. I know we talked about that when Trump was being inaugurated as a potential unifying issue. And I think that he has indicated that he is very serious about getting a bill done. Now, it's still one of those few bills that can garner pretty broad bipartisan support. Obviously, the devil is always in the details. Democrats are going to be pushing for something more comprehensive. They want to go beyond the traditional surface transportation projects, and they want to include things like clean water, broadband, affordable housing, which we agree with. But there's still going to be disagreement on the scope of the legislation, and obviously how you pay for it is going to be a big issue. But President Biden, if this is going to happen, he's going to have to put a lot of political capital behind it. It's going to have to be one of those, for Barack Obama, it was the Affordable Care Act. For President Trump, it was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. He's going to have to put a lot of political capital behind pushing this over the finish line.
Right. And speaking of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we certainly get a lot of questions about this a lot. Do you anticipate any major repeals or major revisions?
Well, it's hard. I don't anticipate anything right away. It's going to be difficult. First of all, you've heard the term reconciliation being thrown around quite a bit. And I think that at some point, the Senate Democrats are going to, like the Senate Republicans did to pass a Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they're going to resort to this privileged treatment of legislation to get it through. But it's going to take a lot of political will. And right now, things are so tight. The margins are so tight that if you lose one Democrat, you're already behind the eight ball. So I think there's going to be an emphasis on things like, the corporate tax cuts. One thing that we're also looking at is in making sure that it's not touched is the 20% qualified business income pass-through deduction. That's really, really important to our members. President Biden has indicated that he wants to phase that out at a certain income level, $400,000, $500,000, depending on who you talk to. We obviously want to explain to the administration how this has been extremely helpful to mom and pop operations. We're not talking about big corporations here. We're talking about folks who provide good paying jobs. They're pillars of their community. They pay their taxes. And this has just been a great benefit, particularly in a tough economic time. But beyond that, of course, there's been a lot of talk about reinstating the first-time homebuyer tax credit. President Biden has indicated he wants $15,000 for first-time homebuyers, and he wants it to be he wants people to be able to take advantage of that deduction right away before they file their taxes. So that is obviously something we welcome working with his administration on. In fact, I've had many conversations with Ways and Means Chairman Richie Neal, and they are already working to incorporate that framework that he laid out into legislative language that makes sense. So in addition to that, expanding the new market tax credit is something that they want to do. Renewable energy related tax credits. You're gonna see a lot of emphasis on green energy, energy related tax cuts. So there's going to be some things that are going to be added, some things that may be repealed. But I think for the most part, and this is just I don't have some magic wand or some crystal ball, but it's a lot easier just to let these things expire naturally than it is to try to repeal them. So I think for the majority of some of the provisions in the TCJA that they like to see repealed, I think they'll just simply let them phase out in 2025. And when you're projecting the budget in the out years, you just you pay for that by just letting it phase out altogether.
So we talked a lot about our legislative efforts and NAR's involvement and, legislative priorities, but none of this will be possible without the advocacy and action from our Realtor members. Can you tell us a little bit more about NAR's Federal Political Coordinator Program and why it's so important that we have these members who have these relationships with our elected officials?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you asked that question because earlier this week I spoke to the 2021 FPC Advocacy Academy and welcomed some of the new FPCs to the fold. I told them then, as I'm telling you guys now, the FPCs are not only our first line of defense, they're our first line of offense as well, with regard to members of Congress dealing with staff. So many times, and I remember this as a staffer for Congressman Spratt and for Senator Lieberman, I remember really valuing the information, the relationship, the anecdotal sort of accounts from realtors, because they really are. They have their hands and their ears and on the pulse of what's going on back in the district. That sort of information is extremely valuable to members of Congress. And I can tell you that it makes our jobs as federal lobbyists a lot easier when we can, rely on FPCs to speak to members of Congress when they're back in the district, and to let them know that we're present not only here in DC, but also back home as well. Real estate's a great economic indicator. And so these folks really do rely on the research, our economic forecasts, the stats that are provided to them through their FPCs. So I can't say enough about the program. And quite frankly, it's really what sets us apart from other organizations. A lot of organizations model and are so envious of the fact that we have such an effective grass tops organization.
Absolutely. And I can echo that on the state level too. Mm-hmm. It's always super helpful for me when I have a local constituent that's able to reach out to our state house members. So I certainly agree with you on that. And we definitely appreciate our FPCs and all their efforts in DC and our state folks as well. Well, Joe, this has been super informative, and we thank you so much for your time today. Last thoughts you want to share with us?
Oh, no, it's just great to be with you. And we have a tremendous opportunity ahead of us this Congress, I think, to hit on a lot of issues that are important to our industry. And again, as I said at the outset, to be a unifier, to bring people together. We're going to be working a lot with groups like the Problem Solvers Caucus in both the House and the Senate. Bipartisan group. They just announced that they're up to 28 members on the Democratic side and 28 members on the Republican side in the House. And there's a bipartisan group in the Senate as well. So this is a year when the margins are very tight that I think we're going to really rely on those moderate centrist members who understand that you're not going to get everything you want, but you have to really try to concentrate on the 75% you can agree on and try to find a way to get it done. The American people are demanding it. I think that NAR has a tremendous role to play in helping to carry a lot of these big ticket items across the finish line. So thank you for what you do, and look forward to seeing y'all down the road.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all your timely updates. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, Lindsay. Always great to be with you.
All right. Thanks, Joe.